In a world built on gold and glory, Francis of Assisi chose nothing. He walked away from silks, inheritance, and the comfort of his father's wealth to embrace a life of poverty so radical it confused everyone around him. Yet in his emptiness, he found abundance, a love so vast it included lepers, birds, the wind, and even death itself. Francis was not merely rejecting wealth, he was searching for the truth hidden beneath it. To love purely, he believed, one must own nothing. And so, he became the richest of all, not in possessions, but in peace.
In the bustling hills of medieval Assisi, wealth was worshipped as much as God. Merchants flaunted their fortunes, nobles fought for land, and the poor served quietly in the shadows. It was a time when success meant gold, armor, and influence, and young Francis was born right into it. His city mirrored the spirit of the age, ambitious, proud, and blind to the suffering beneath its stone walls. Yet within this world of trade and pride, one man would soon rise, not to rule it, but to renounce it entirely.
Before sainthood, Francis was the life of every feast, charming, reckless, and adored. The son of a wealthy cloth merchant, he lived for music, wine, and the thrill of adventure. He dreamed of knighthood, of glory in battle, of fame and admiration. Yet behind the laughter and luxury, something stirred, a quiet longing that no party could silence. Francis sought joy in the world, but the world gave him only noise. His heart was restless, waiting for a call that would shatter his illusions and awaken his soul.
At 20, Francis rode into battle full of pride and ambition, but destiny had other plans. Captured in war and thrown into a dark prison, the laughter of his youth faded into silence. Months of sickness and despair stripped away his arrogance, leaving only questions. Why did glory lead to pain? Why did the dreams of the world end in chains? In that cold cell, Francis faced the collapse of everything he believed in. The prisoner began to awaken, not to defeat, but to a deeper truth. Freedom is not found in conquest, but in surrender.
One day, while praying alone in the crumbling chapel of San Damiano, Francis heard a voice that would change his life forever. From the wooden cross above the altar came the words, "Francis, rebuild my church, which you see is falling into ruin." At first, he thought it meant repairing the stones and walls, but the call went far deeper. It was a mission to renew faith itself, to restore love where it had been forgotten. With trembling hands and a burning heart, Francis began gathering stones, unaware he was rebuilding the soul of Christianity itself.
In one of the most shocking scenes of the Middle Ages, Francis stood before the bishop and his wealthy father and stripped off every piece of clothing he wore. Before the stunned crowd, he laid his fine garments at his father's feet and declared, "Until now, I have called you Father on earth. From now on, I can say only, Our Father who art in heaven." Naked, free, and trembling in the cold, Francis walked away from comfort, inheritance, and pride. In that moment, he was reborn, not as the son of a merchant, but as a child of God.
After giving up everything, Francis discovered a paradox. The less he owned, the freer he became. He wandered the countryside barefoot, singing hymns to the sun, the wind, and the rain, calling them his brothers and sisters. He begged for food, slept under the stars, and lived with a joy the rich could not imagine. Poverty, for Francis was not misery, but liberation, a way to strip the soul of pride and possessiveness. He found heaven not in gold or grandeur, but in simplicity, laughter, and the beauty of creation itself. Francis saw the entire universe as a living hymn to God. The sun, the moon, the birds, the trees, all were brothers and sisters sharing the same divine breath. To him, nature wasn't just background, it was revelation. He preached to animals, blessed the fields, and thanked the elements as friends. His Canticle of the Creatures was one of the first great poems in Italian, celebrating the holiness of existence itself. For Francis, every part of creation reflected God's love, radiant, humble, and endlessly alive.
When Francis preached to the birds, the story became legend, but behind it lies something deeper than magic. The birds, attentive and silent, symbolized nature listening to truth. Whether miracle or metaphor, the tale captures Francis's radical belief that all creatures could respond to divine love. In an age when humans sought to dominate nature, Francis spoke to it as a friend. His words to the birds were not commands, but communion, a vision of harmony between man, creation, and the Creator.
When a fierce wolf terrorized the town of Gubbio, Francis did not bring weapons, he brought peace. Facing the beast with calm faith, he spoke to it as a brother, offering food instead of fear. The wolf, legend says, bowed its head and became gentle. Whether literal or symbolic, this story reveals Francis's greatest power, the ability to disarm violence through love. He saw even in the savage the possibility of goodness, proof that mercy can tame what force never could.
When Francis embraced poverty, he thought he was walking alone, but soon others heard his call. Men from all walks of life left behind comfort, money, and status to join him. They wandered barefoot, preaching peace and serving the forgotten. There were no rules at first, only love and simplicity. From their small band grew a movement that shook medieval Europe, a revolution not of swords, but of hearts. The Franciscans were born from the courage to live the gospel literally. Francis's rule was unlike any the church had seen. No hierarchy, no riches, no privileges. He asked his brothers to own nothing, to see authority as service, and to find power only in humility. Poverty was not misery, but liberation from the chains of greed. In a world obsessed with dominance, Francis built a community that inverted every value. The greatest was the servant, the richest was the one who needed least. It was a manifesto for spiritual rebellion, a new kingdom where love ruled instead of power. When Francis, barefoot and wrapped in rags, entered the halls of the Vatican, he brought silence to the marble corridors of power. Cardinals and priests whispered, was this man a fool or a prophet? Pope Innocent III, surrounded by wealth and gold, saw before him a mirror of the Church's forgotten soul. The legend says the Pope dreamed of a crumbling basilica held up by a single poor man, Francis. With trembling humility, the beggar from Assisi received the Pope's blessing, not for conquest or riches, but to rebuild faith itself. Simplicity had moved the throne of Rome. Amid the violence of the Crusades, when swords clashed in the name of God, Francis did something unthinkable. He crossed enemy lines, not to fight, but to speak. In 1219, he journeyed to Egypt to meet Sultan al-Kamil, nephew of the great Saladin. The camp was surrounded by death and hatred, yet Francis walked through it unarmed, clothed only in faith. The two men, A Christian friar and a Muslim ruler met not as foes, but as seekers of truth. They spoke of peace, of God, of mercy. No conversion took place, but something greater did: mutual respect. In an age of holy wars, Francis showed that holiness might mean daring to love the enemy.
High upon Mount Laverna, in solitude and prayer, Francis sought to feel what Christ felt, not in glory, but in pain and love. There, surrounded by silence and the wind of the mountains, he received what no man before him had: the stigmata, the wounds of Christ imprinted on his body. His hands, feet, and side began to bleed, a mystery that blurred the line between human and divine. For Francis, it was not a curse, but a gift, a sign that love, when total, unites the soul so deeply with God that even the body bears the mark. To his followers, the stigmata became proof that compassion can be so powerful it transcends flesh.
For Francis, suffering was not an enemy to be avoided, but a teacher to be embraced. He saw pain as the fire that purifies love, not punishment, but participation in the divine mystery. When illness racked his fragile body, when rejection stung, when hunger gnawed, he called each hardship sister, for through them he drew nearer to God. His joy was not naive happiness, but radiant peace born from surrender. In his weakness he found strength. In his wounds he found grace. Francis taught that to truly follow Christ is to see suffering not as loss, but as the hidden doorway to joy.
Near the end of his life, blind and in pain, Francis composed one of the most beautiful hymns in history, the Canticle of the Creatures. In it, he called the sun his brother, the moon his sister, fire his companion, and even death his friend. Through his poetry, Francis revealed a vision of the universe as one great family bound by love. Every creature, from the smallest bird to the vast sky, shared in the same divine breath. His words were not just poetry, but theology, a celebration of unity beyond pride and possession. In Francis's eyes, creation itself sang the language of God.
As his frail body failed, Francis did not fear death. He embraced it as a long-awaited companion. To him, death was not an end, but a return to the eternal embrace of love. He called her Sister Death, greeting her with the same affection he showed all living things. Surrounded by his brothers in the simple chapel of the Porzian Cola, he asked to be laid on the bare earth, singing softly from his Canticle of the Creatures. In those final moments, the man who had renounced everything met death not with despair, but with peace, transforming the most feared moment of life into a song of joy and surrender. Francis's poverty was not just a rejection of wealth. It was a revolution of the soul. He understood that possessions were more than objects. They were attachments that shaped the mind and bound the heart. By stripping himself of everything, Francis was not escaping the world, but confronting it, dismantling the ego that feeds on control and fear. His joy came from freedom within, a radical detachment that dissolved the illusion of self-importance. In psychological terms, his poverty was the healing of desire, the transformation of emptiness into fullness, and of loss into love.
What Francis began in silence and simplicity soon transformed the entire church. His life was not a doctrine, but a living protest against greed, power, and spiritual emptiness. The Franciscans redefined holiness, not in cathedrals or titles, but in humility, joy, and service to the poor. Francis shifted the focus of Christianity from authority to authenticity, from fear to love. His message was disarming, that to follow Christ meant to live like him, freely and compassionately. The Franciscan Revolution did not conquer kingdoms, it conquered hearts, renewing faith through the beauty of simplicity and the truth of compassion. Centuries after his death, Francis of Assisi still speaks to a world drowning in materialism and noise. He showed that true wealth lies in detachment, that real power is found in gentleness, and that love, pure, uncalculated love, can heal both man and nature. Francis redefined success as inner freedom, turning the act of giving into a form of joy. His life is not nostalgia, it's a challenge to every age, every soul, every system built on greed. The beggar from Assisi became richer than kings because he discovered the one treasure no thief can steal, a heart completely free.